Well, Qantas CEO Alan Joyce is right now facing a cost of living inquiry, and he is being interrogated over his sky-high airfares. Joyce was grilled about the exorbitant cost of flights, both interstate and international. The cost of flights out of Australia have increased by between 40 and 52% since before the COVID pandemic. This is according to reports in the Fin today. And this is during a cost of living crisis. The airline has also had more complaints against it than any other company, according to the ACCC. At the same time, Qantas has announced a $1.7 billion profit pre-tax. It was a $2.47 billion profit for 2023. Interstate travel for the average Australian to visit family or for business is now basically unaffordable. The implication is clear. Qantas is profiting by making the average Australian pay more money for a worse service. But Joyce was defiant, not apologetic.
By the way, that stats are wrong. So our comparison, to be absolutely clear, is we said airfares reached the peak internationally in December of last year, 2022. They've been coming down as capacity is being added. And the capacity that we have internationally this July is twice what it was the previous July.
Look, to make matters worse, Qantas intervened to ask the Albanese government to block a rival airline, Qatar, from running more flights in and out of Australia. This could have lowered the cost of international airfares, although Alan Joyce wasn't admitting that point when he was questioned on it this afternoon. The Fin Review's editorial on this topic today said that this was an anti-competitive arrangement to protect Qantas from aviation competition. The Fin editorial says the political heat should be turned up on the Albanese government's failure to give a sensible and transparent explanation for rejecting Qatar Airways' application to run 28 new weekly flights to and from Doha to help cheapen the price of flying in and out of Australia. The Fin wrote that after offering risible justifications, including preventing carbon emissions, the hapless Transport Minister Catherine King went to ground before surfacing on regional radio to claim the decision was all about protecting Australian jobs. But then we had the Assistant Treasurer, Stephen Jones, come out today, and he claimed that the Albanese government blocked these extra Qatar Airways flights in order to keep the national carrier profitable. He said, have a look at this.
We can drive prices down, but if we drive them down to a level where it's actually unsustainable to run an airline, instead of having two carriers, we'll design our markets in a way which will make it unsustainable.
That's quite an extraordinary admission, and the opposition has immediately hit back. Shadow Attorney General Michaelia Cash slammed these comments.
Stephen Jones himself at least told the truth. We made the decision to keep Qantas profitable. Well, guess what you did? But not only that, for a government that talks tough on competition laws and tackling duopolies and monopolies, Stephen Jones himself, Andrew, said this, but Qantas was a special case. The only people who lose out here are Australians.
And Alan Joyce, by the way, personally profits from all of this. He walks away from Qantas with around $24 million when he leaves later this year. Now, Alan Joyce did a series of media interviews on Thursday evening, and he was grilled by the ABC's Sarah Ferguson on whether Qantas planned to pay back any of the $2.7 billion in taxpayer subsidies it had received during the pandemic, given that it's now recording record profits. But have a look at the response Alan Joyce gave in that interview.
What happens, I think, companies like us will be paying that back because as we're making money, we'll pay corporation tax and we'll be getting there faster.
Well, that's clearly a ridiculous response. The Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, was also asked the following day whether Qantas should be repaying some of these government subsidies. And here's what he had to say on ABC Radio.
Yesterday, Qantas posted a $2.5 billion pre-tax profit. During the pandemic, they received $2.7 billion in money from the taxpayer. Why aren't they being asked to return some of those funds? Because yesterday, Alan Joyce said, no, he doesn't think there's a case to return them.
Well, I think when those funds were provided by the previous government, there wasn't an understanding or an agreement that they would be repaid in some form. Obviously, I saw the reports yesterday about Qantas profits, and I think what it reflects is the fact that the Australian tourism industry is making a big contribution to our economy, and that's a good thing.
And we haven't even spoken yet about the very important issue of Qantas's unused flight credits. In other words, the money owed to customers for cancelled flights from between March 2020 and October 2021. Credits not applied to a booking by the end of this year will expire, and Qantas will keep your money. Well, journalist Joe Aston writes today that Qantas should have just automatically refunded the balance to any customer's credit cards. He writes that they've charged their customers without providing a service and are now on the brink of confiscating their money. In 126 days, Qantas is going to legally steal approximately $500 million from its customers. It is staggering. He writes, will the ACCC do nothing? Will Minister for Qantas, Catherine King, she's not officially the Minister for Qantas, this is Joe Aston writing this, and Prime Minister Anthony Albanese do nothing? You bet they will. Well, there's now a class action over these outstanding travel credits worth at least $370 million, but potentially higher than that, potentially as much as $500 million. The case filed in the federal court accuses Qantas of misleading or deceptive conduct, also unconscionable conduct in contravention with Australian consumer law. The ACCC, the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, is also investigating Qantas's handling of these flight credits after hundreds of people complained. And by the way, Qantas's response to these pesky questions was to ban the Australian Financial Review from the Qantas lounge. Clearly a pathetic move. Qantas's poor service is now putting political pressure on the Albanese government. This is the national airline, and a lot of Australians feel let down. Again, this is the most complained about company for 2 years in a row, according to the ACCC. But when Joyce was asked about all of this, when he was asked about the flight credits at the Senate inquiry this afternoon, he really struggled to answer. He tried to deflect the questions. Tony Sheldon, a former union boss who dealt with Alan Joyce, had to repeatedly ask the questions. A lot of the senators were clearly getting very frustrated at the outgoing CEO of Qantas.
Can you confirm how many flight credits Qantas Group is holding on behalf of Australian consumers?
So let me finish the last question, because I didn't get to the answer, particularly on Sydney-Melbourne and Sydney-Canberra that you raised, because I know that's been raised.
Point of order, Chair. Sorry, Mr Joyce. I know you love a good explanation, but I have limited time and I want to go to flight credits in my final line of questioning. How many flight credits is Qantas Group holding on behalf of Australian customers, and why should Qantas keep their money if it's not claimed by the 31st of December?
So, again, can I finish the previous question, Senator? Because on Sydney-Canberra, we also need to address
sorry, point of order, Chair. Yes, I have asked a new question and I need it answered, which is how many customers' flight credits are you holding?
I'm going to insist you provide that full total. Just tell me, what is the total sum value of flight credits remaining across the whole Qantas Group, including Jetstar and overseas customers? The total.
Senator, we're happy to take that question on notice, simply because we don't have those figures in front of us. There's been no lack of transparency, though, can I say?
So no lack of transparency, and you can't give me a total figure?
Well, not on the spot, but what we have done, it's easy to find.
Inquiry to talk about cost of living, and you're saying to me you can't give us a total figure. So you're saying that you have included overseas credits and you've included Jetstar credits when you've said $370 million.
So no, we've been very clear again. So this, again, I want to be clear. There's no lack of transparency.